Welcome to Maths for All. This is exam practice. So today I have a couple of algebra questions from a past mock paper, and they're typical 25-mark questions found in section A of paper 1. Okay, so this is part A of the first of those, and here we have a linear equation. Okay, so have a look there. We have some multiplication to do. Okay, so remember that this number 3 here must be multiplied by both parts of the bracket by x and then by 5 and so on. Okay, so 3 times x is 3x and 3 times 5 is 15. Moving to the right, then we have a plus 2 to be multiplied by the 6 and then by the x. So 2 times 6 is 12, plus 2 x's is 2x, equals to 19 plus x. Okay, so we've left equals right. First I'm going to simplify or tidy up on the left, so identify things that are the same. So we've got 3x and 2x, together they make 5x. And I've got plus 15 and plus 12, together they make plus 27, equals 19 plus x. Okay, next, remember we're solving for x. We want to finish with x equals a value. So we're going to gather the x's to the left and the numbers to the right. Now recall the golden rule of equations. If left equals right, if you make a change to the left, you must make this identical change to the right to keep it true and balanced. Okay, so I don't want this x on the left, so I'm going to take x from the left, or the right, excuse me. So I must make the same change on the left. Okay, I don't want this plus 27 on the left, so I'm going to take it away. And I must make the identical change on the right. Okay, so this combination gives me 0, this combination gives me 0, and so what remains? On the left I have 5x take 1x, so 5 take 1 is 4x, and on the right I have 19 take away 27. Okay, so you're taking more than you have, so the result will be negative, and you have 8 more negative. Okay, check that with your calculator if you're uncertain. Okay, almost finished. 4x is equal to minus 8. To get 1x, we divide both sides by whatever's beside the x by 4. So I get 1x equals to minus 2. Okay, take your time to get your signs correct. Okay, so that's part A of this question. Let's look at the. So there were 10 marks going for it, but if you see over here, you have opportunity to earn a low partial credit or a high partial credit if you don't get it fully correct. We got 10 out of 10. Okay, so a low partial credit is gotten if you do any correct multiplication. Okay, so you should be able to do that. So never leave a blank space, always have a go at the question and you might get something. If you get the first line correct, fully correct multiplication, so if you get as far as here, you're at 6 out of 10. Alright, or if you make one mistake in your multiplication but you do everything else correct, you get 6 out of 10. So always give it a go. Part B of this question, solve the simultaneous equations below where x and y are real numbers. So quick look, the top one here is a linear equation, regular x and y, a straight line on a graph. The bottom one is non-linear. You've got x squared and y squared. It's not a straight line on a graph, in fact that's a circle. Okay, to solve this type where you have one of each, we use substitution. Okay, so we begin with the linear. And we're going to rearrange it so that we get x equals or y equals and have something to substitute. In this case we'll do y equals because we have one y, so it's easier to rearrange. That means we have to take 4x from both sides. Okay, and it leaves me with y equals 5 minus 4x. Okay, I'm going to put a circle around that because I'll use it in a minute for substitution. So writing down the nonlinear equation, what we're going to do now is take the 5 minus 4x and we're going to replace y with it. Everywhere we see y, we're going to replace it with 5 minus 4x. That's the substitution part. So rewrite the nonlinear equation, replace y or substitute for y, it still needs to be squared, equals 13. Now, next step is to square out that bracket or to multiply it by itself. Minus 4x, 5 minus 4x equals 13 is still there on the right. So multiply out the two brackets. You can take as many or as few steps as you wish. Use rough paper if you wish. Just be wary of taking shortcuts in case you miss some of the middle terms. This is a 2 by 2 multiplication, so you should have 4 parts to the answer. Let's start with this 5. 5 times 5 is 25. 5 times minus 4x is minus 20x. Now let's continue with the minus 4. That times 5 gives me another minus 20x. And minus 4x by minus 4x. Minus by minus gives me plus. 4 by 4 gives me 16. And x by x gives me x squared. So 16x squared. And we still have 13 on the right. The next step is to simplify or tidy up, identify things that are of the same kind. We have 1x squared and 16x squared together give me a total of 17x squared. I have minus 20x and minus 20x, so that's down 20, down 20. So in total we are down 40, so we have minus 40x. And in numbers on the left I have a plus 25. We still have 13 on the right. Okay, so it's starting to look familiar. It looks like we have a quadratic equation, but whenever we solved quadratic equations before, we always had an equal 0 on the right. So let's rearrange for that. So we're going to take 13 from the right, meaning we have to make the same change on the left. And our quadratic equation turns out to be 17x squared minus 40x. 25 take 13 is plus 12 equals 0. So now we have a quadratic equation to solve. Okay, you have two methods by which you're able to do this. You've learned to factorize. Okay, so use factors where you get the two multiplying brackets and put each equal to 0. Or you can use what we call the minus b formula, which is a quadratic formula, and it's in your formula and tables books in the algebra section. The marking scheme on the next slide uses the factors method, so I'm going to use the formula method to show you that we'll get the same answer. Okay, so the quadratic formula from the formula book goes like this: x equals minus b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac, all divided by 2a. Now what are a, b and c? So look to your quadratic equation. The coefficient of the x squared part is a, so a is 17. The coefficient of regular x is b, so what's besides regular x? It's minus 40, and it's important to include that minus. And the constant or the number part is c, and that is plus 12. Okay, so let's substitute into our formula. So the formula begins with minus b, so we'll have minus 40. So minus 40 means we have plus 40, so it's important to get that right. Plus or minus 40 squared. Notice I use brackets because the minus is part of b and it needs to be squared also. Minus 4 times a is 17 and c is 12. And that all needs to be divided by 2 times a, which is 2 17ths. Okay, after this slide I'm going to show you a video how I can do all of this at the one time. Just one entry in my calculator, well, once for plus and once for minus. But for now I'm going to work it out. Okay, So for 40, plus or minus the square root of minus 40 squared is 1600 minus, now I have to work this one on my calculator, 4 times 17 times 12 is 816. Okay, divided by 2 17ths is 34. Okay, the next step would be to subtract under the square root sign. 1600 minus that is 784. Still, we need to divide everything by 34. The next step is to see what is the square root of 784. Okay, so we have 40 plus or minus 28 is the square root of 784 over 34. Okay. Now, to finish that, let's use one time the plus sign and one time the negative sign, because for every quadratic equation you should get two different answers. Well, they can be the same, but two separate answers. Okay, so the first version we're going to use plus, so 40 plus 28 over 34. And in the second version we'll do 40 minus 28 over 34. Okay, now 40 plus 28 is 68 over 34, and 40 minus 18 is 12 over 34. Okay, now you can see that the first one divides in evenly, we'll get 2. Alright, and the second one, it doesn't divide, it's a fraction, it's less than 1, but maybe there are common factors to top and bottom. We might be able to simplify that fraction. Okay, they're both even numbers. Let's divide top and bottom by 2 and I get 6 over 17. Okay, and I can't simplify any further, I'll leave it like that. Your scientific calculator, if you put in 12 divided by 34, will give you 6 over 17. It can help you to simplify. Okay, now am I finished? No, I'm not. I still have to find y. Okay, so if I go back to my circled equation, okay, y was equal to 5 minus 4x. Okay, so this is the quickest way to get there. So we're going to find a matching y for each x. So y equals 5 minus 4 times 2. So replace the x. Y is equal to 5 minus 8. I get y is equal to minus 3 for that side. Okay, and when y is, or x is equal to 6 over 17, this is what it looks like. 4 times 6 over 17. Y is equal to 5 minus 24 over 17. Now you can go through your fraction works, but I recommend using the fraction button on your calculator in these ones. Okay, it finds the common denominator and all of that for you. 24 over 17. And I get 61. 61 over 17. Okay. Alright, so I'm just going to present my answer nicely now. So the x and y couples that I found were 2 goes with minus 3 and 6/17 goes with 61/17. Okay, so a lot of work, but also a lot of marks. Alright, let's check if we're correct. Okay, so there's my x2 and minus 3 and 6 over 17 and 61 over 17. So 15 marks going for that one. Okay, there's opportunities to gain low, middle and high partial credits. Low is if you just change your linear equation around. Okay, so here if you got this far you got 4 out of 15. Mid is if you substitute correctly, so into nonlinear equation. So if you get here you can get up to 7 out of 15. High partial credits if you do correct multiplication but error in solving, so you can get up to 11 if you get to this stage. Or if you make a mistake in multiplication, error in multiplication, but does everything else correctly, Okay, you can get 11 out of 15. If you find your x, one variable, but forget to return and find your y, you've lost out on 4 marks. You'd only get 11. Okay, so remember always to go back and find your y. Okay, so here's how you can do the minus b formula all at once on the calculator. Okay, so firstly use the fraction button, and what we wanted to enter was minus 40, which is plus 40. Now, the one thing you can't do is use the plus minus at the same time. So first we're going with plus. So that's minus b plus the square root of bracket. Now, use this negative button when you have a negative number as opposed to minus. Sometimes it confuses the calculator. Okay, close the bracket. That has to be squared. Minus 4. A was 17. C was 12. Okay, so that's the top line done. Then use your cursor to go down underneath, and it was 2 17s. Oops. Okay, so that's the whole thing entered. Type it as you see it, and then press equals, and we get 2, which was the answer we had before. Now to do the other version, where you use the negative sign, you don't have to type everything again. Use your back arrow and scroll the whole way back. Okay, and just before the X, you can press the delete button. Okay, and then type in minus instead of plus. Now just press your equals, and you get the result that we got before, 6. Okay, so here's another 25 mark question from a paper 1 on algebra. Part A, solve the equation 3x squared plus 5x minus 1 equals 0. Give your answer correct to 2 decimal places. So straight away for me, there are alarm bells ringing. Okay, 2 decimal places tells me that I will not find factors if I try to factorize and solve this quadratic equation. Okay, it's a sign immediately that I should use the quadratic formula or the minus b formula. Other indicators there would be if they told you to give your answer in third form, or if they said give your answer in the form of a plus or minus root b or something that looked like that. If that happens, straight away go to your minus b formula. Take it from your formula and tables books. It's on the algebra pages. Okay, and the first thing we must decide is what is a, b and c. So a is the coefficient of x squared, so a is 3. B is the coefficient of x, so what's beside x? It's a plus 5. And c is the constant or the number part, it's minus 1. Don't forget to include the minus. Now, at a minimum for the examiner, I would write down the formula and I would write in my substitution. So we have minus b, minus 5, plus or minus. B squared will be 5 squared. Note, I don't need to use brackets this time because there's no negative. Okay, and we'll have 4 times a is 3 times minus 1. Don't forget your minus there. Okay, sorry, that should read 2a up there. All divided by 2 times 3. Okay, so at a minimum I would write this. And now, because I've learned how to do it on my calculator, okay, you can pause the video and do it yourself. What I find from my calculator is I get minus 5 plus square root of 37 over 6. If I change the minus, I simply get minus 5 minus root 37 over 6. Okay, now that's not how I was asked for my answer. I was asked to use 2 decimal places. So I'm going to, when you get your answer on the calculator, you can use this button. Looks like this. It means third to decimal. That's on the Casio. Okay, and there's a change button on the Sharp, I believe. Okay, so I'm using that. So for the first version with the plus, I get 0.18040 and so on. Okay, to write that correct at 2 decimal places, so after the decimal place I want 2 digits, stopping here. The numbers between 0.18 and 0.19, which is it closest to? Because this is less than halfway, it's closest to 0.18. Now, if I go back on my calculator, replace my plus with my minus, okay, and change that to a decimal, what I get is minus 1.84712 and so on. Okay, to 2 decimal places, I want to include those 2 digits. So the numbers between minus 1.84 and minus 1.85, which is it closest to? Well, it's more than halfway because the next digit is 7. So my answer is minus 1.85. Okay, so let's look at the marking scheme. Did I get it right? Yes, I did. So they're given 15 marks for that one. Okay, and there's 3 places to get partial marks. Okay, any correct substitution. So at a minimum, you write that in and you get 4 marks, even if you didn't get them all fully right. Full correct substitution, actually, you can get 7 marks there if you get it fully correct. Okay, error in multiplication of correct formula. Okay, so if you made a mistake in your calculations, you could get 11 marks. If you only gave one of the answers and not 2 of them, you'd get 11 out of 15. If you got it, if your work was all correct, but you did have an error in substitution, if you had one mistake, then you get 11 out of 15. Okay, so lots of opportunity there to get marks. Okay, part B of that question was an inequality. Solve the inequality 6 minus 4x less than or equal to 26, where x is an element of z, that's the integers. Show the solution set on the number line below. So let's write it out here for us. Now, by and large, inequalities work the same as equations. If you make a change to the left, you have to make the same change to the right. So we're solving for x. I'm going to take 6 from both sides. Okay, and I'm left with minus 4x less than or equal to 26 take 6 is 20. This is the only time or the only way inequalities work differently to equations. If you multiply or divide by a negative, your inequality sign reverses. Okay, less than changes to greater than, or greater than changes to less than. Okay, so remember that. It's the only time they're different. So why am I highlighting that? Because I'm about to divide by minus 4 because I want to solve for 1x. Okay, divide by minus 4. Okay, so I've divided by a negative, so my less than or equal to changes to greater than or equal to, and 20 divided by minus 4 is minus 5. Okay, so I've the calculation bit done. However, I'm going to revisit my question, and there's an extra piece of information there. Solve the inequality where x is an element of z. So you have to know your number groups. Z equals the integers. Tell me about the integers. They are whole numbers. Plus, minus, and 0. Okay, so we have to indicate on our number line the possible values for x. So x could be equal to minus 5 exactly because it's greater than or equal to. Okay, so I'm going to put a solid dot there to show that. Okay, and then it could be the numbers greater than minus 5. Greater than means we go to the right. So it could be the whole numbers. It could be minus 4. Okay, my pen doesn't like doing these Okay, maybe X's might prefer. Okay, usually we use solid dots here. Okay, it could be -3, -2, -1, 0, 1. So fill them all in. Okay, and it would continue. All right. So an arrow is no harm there. So we've solved correctly. Let's look at our marking, and we've put it on the numbered line correctly. So there are 10 marks going for that. Okay, but you can, as always, get some partial credits if you didn't reverse the sign and you drew what you had got incorrectly on the number line. You can get 4 out of 10. Okay, if you didn't reverse the sign but your number line matched your result, then you can get 6 out of 10. Okay, so they're quite generous there.